Welcome back to Devs Who Can't Code, and I am the Dev Who Can't Code with our Dev Who Can Code, Hope TS. What is up, boss? Welcome back, man.
Not much. I building a GPT in the background. Its name right now is Dev Who Can Code, but if I'm the Dev Who Can Code, I think we should name it Dev Who Will Code.
I
I think that's the best name
agree.
for it.
I think that works. But so I want to go over what we've been thinking about in the background and try to figure out, because what we wanted this show to be is to figure out how we can lower the barrier to entry to people, to devs who can't code, to people kind of in my position, essentially, who have technical literacy and want to explore things and want to build things for themselves. But how many little problems there are with like kind of creating an environment for the code, for executing it, and for sharing it also, like so that I can build something and then you guys can use it, or you can build something and then share it with me, et cetera, that we can actually share this stuff out with the community and not have unique problems to each of our machines. And so in the thinking about micro apps and the tiny apps stuff that I have been building is, and I brought Hope on, and we've had multiple discussions about this now, trying to figure out how to make this work, is how could we create an app, an environment as kind of a base. And then we were also specifically thinking pair runtime, which if you follow the pair report at all or Bitcoin Audible, you probably know about this already. But my other shows, I talk about it quite a bit, is being able to deliver these things peer-to-peer in an extremely simple way. If using that as a base makes it so that you don't have to understand GitHub, you don't have to know how to, kind of package things and go through a whole bunch of different complexities or have accounts with other services. You can literally I can host out a key to an application, or anybody can host out and then share a key. And then anybody who wants to run that application can just punch in that key and have the application. And I think that's a huge, huge simplification if we can turn that into basically a QR code where people don't really know it. It's just a link, right? It's just like any link on the internet. So our thinking was to figure out how to create a simple environment to run code inside of. How do we make it so that I can drag and drop some sort of subset of code or an app into its app, and then run it on my machine, and then essentially you can run it on yours. And so that's what we are doing. This is going to be a much bigger project, and this is going to take a while to build out. But I think one of the big things, and Hope you can back me up on this, on kind of the thinking or getting people to understand what we're talking about here, is that this is going to really help us break down the architecture of an app. Like, how do we think about building an app and what are all of the pieces of it? And that's what we're going to do in this episode, is we're just going to go draw a diagram of the app we're trying to build, because it's going to take a lot more than just one episode to do this. So we're literally going to map out our episode so that we can build it out over the next couple of episodes. And what we're doing right now is I'm not so fantastic at the architecture side, but Hope is going to have a much better idea of guiding us and teaching us exactly what pieces of the puzzle we need, and then handing it over to ChatGPT. What framework can we give to ChatGPT so that it will produce code that is very much in line with the way we are building stuff. Hope, if you want to talk about the custom GPT you've been working on, and then the base that you've been building for this, so that we have basically a jumping off point every time we start a project.
Yeah, you touched on a lot there, but we did a few episodes and a few attempts that probably are never going to become episodes, working on how to build projects without any ability to code. So anything that the GPT would give us that it would require like real programming experience to actually understand what it's saying. We ignored anything it said to do with that, and we didn't code. And what we quickly learned, and something that I've been working on solving, is that the idea of being a dev who can't code on its own is a bit of a pipe dream. If you can't code, you're not really a developer, you're a designer, which is not like a value judgment or anything. It just means that there's a different set of skills that you need. So having the GPT give you code that you don't have to know where to put it in a bigger file and what lines to delete and what to replace. You don't you need the GPT to give you complete files so that you can copy and paste them and you don't have to actually be able to read through all the code and understand it. That's important. To for a dev who can't code, it's important that is important that the GPT gives you the complete files. Um, it only gives you code that can run on any machine, which is great for npm packages and like Node.js. I think it's pretty good for that nowadays. Except for mobile, but if you're building mobile apps, that's a little more involved anyway. Um, and state management and knowing where data goes. So if you have a bunch of different files and you need the GPT to give you only complete files, what if data needs to be transported between those files? Um, you're going to run into issues. That's never going to be a simple task for you as a dev that can't code. When you have data that needs to travel between a whole bunch of different files or a whole bunch of different components, it's never going to be, I don't know anything about this. I'm not going to learn anything about it. I'm just going to tell GPT the app I want and I'm going to get it. It's not going to be that way. Designing your app and knowing exactly what you want, that is the skill that a dev who can't code needs. So you're like a software designer almost, is how I've come to think of it. And I'm what I've been working on is building tools that can help you as a code designer uh, to actually build the things that you want to build without getting lost learning an entire esoteric skill that you just don't want to learn.
Before you get into the custom GPT thing, I like that framing or that explanation of it, is that you need to know enough to be a good app designer in order for AI to be able to usefully build for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the AI is not going to know the bigger architecture, and the larger the context, the more errors it is going to give you, the crappier the output is. But if you can design it so that it's in your mind, you know the pieces, you know how to think about like saving state, so that, okay, how do I have something where this is the same when I open it up next time? People don't think about the fact that like that's something that you have to actively do, that every button needs to have a process behind it, that the interface needs to be connected in a certain way, that there are very explicit flows and pieces of the puzzle here, that need to be thought about in a design way. So if you can wrap your head around the design of an app, then you can design it more and more modular so that the individual pieces can work together. And ChatGPT, or AI in general, is really good at giving tiny pieces that work with a very simple or singular task. But the bigger and more things that you put into one, the shittier the results are going to be, and the more you're just going to have so much technical bloat down the road. If you're trying to build something big, it's just not going to work. It's just never going to work.
But the thing is, when you're an actual developer, like working on bigger things, um, like in all my experience, every time I tried to build something that was like a big and complicated part, it always ended in catastrophe. You don't build big complicated parts. You build a bunch of little simple parts that are what you need, and then you put them together. So it's not like that skill applied to this is like different. It's just it's even more important for a dev that can't code that they design their parts to be simple and basic, because there are a lot of instances for devs that can't code where not just ChatGPT but any AI or LLM. Sorry, probably not good to use AI in terms. You came here to learn with AI, but specifically what we're using is LLMs. Um, LLMs could give you the correct response, give you what you need, but things can be so esoteric that you don't know how to properly parse it, and because you didn't understand exactly what it was saying and you put its code into your project in a way that wasn't exactly what it wanted, it gives you an error that the LLM will never be able to understand because it doesn't know what you did. So like standard interpersonal troubleshooting issues, it like that stuff happens between people as well. Um, so instead of saying devs who can't code, as in we're going to show you, like you could just type 10 words in the LLM and then you can get whatever you want. That's not realistic. But what is realistic is we're working right now on desktop apps with GUIs, like graphical user interfaces, little desktop apps. We can get you to build things like that, desktop apps, without knowing how to code using LLMs. And then going forward over time, we are going to branch out into other things, but it requires specific tooling. So I'm working on using AI, OpenAI's custom GPT builder, building a specialized GPT that uses our code base that is going to be our starting point for every desktop app that we use. We're going to have the same exact starting point, and it's going to use that, and it's going to build whatever app you want based on what you ask it. But you need to learn how to work with it properly, which is what we're going to be doing with these episodes. And then another thing is learning Git and GitHub and all these things. That can get confusing, and if you do it wrong, it can get very frustrating. So instead, uh, I'm building a command line tool that will help you build out your code base, the starting point of your code base, easily, and without knowing how Git works and all of that stuff. So, custom GPT, the command line interface, which requires a little bit of opening up the terminal, but you're going to have to get used to that anyway. It's not that scary. You can open, but in case you don't know, terminals really aren't that scary. If you don't know what you're doing, you're probably not going to hurt anything. You could just open up your terminal and type random letters, and it's fine. It might look intimidating, but it's not that big a deal. So we're going to be using terminal sometimes. We're not going to be doing anything complicated, so it's not that big a deal.
As somebody who took a long time to finally take a dive into the terminal, like I remember it specifically when I did because it was always intimidating to me. But it's funny, there's just a handful of things that if you learn how to navigate the terminal, it really just is not as uncomfortable. It's literally your UI in text. So like you can just look at the folder that you're in and it just shows it as a list. You just have to say ls, like just list it. And you can actually drag and drop everything into the terminal. So if you want to go to a folder, like as long as you know like the commands, like some basic commands, it really is not, do not be intimidated by the terminal. And it's actually like a lot of fun once you get the just a handful of basic things. It's really it's just kind of think about it like reading your computer instead of clicking and moving through your computer in a graphical way. So that's just something I wanted to say on that because I was very happy when I finally bit the bullet and did that. And I would love for this show to be a place to encourage a lot of people to use the terminal who've just never done it before.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that the audience that we're trying to build for this, we don't expect anyone here to be uh, devs by any means, not professional, not hobbyists. Like, we're not expecting you to have any understanding or knowledge. So, we're building things in a way that you're not, we're going to hold your hand through certain things. And if you have any issues, always you can reach out to us and post your questions wherever you want. Um, we will be more than happy to help. We aren't those like Four Eyes Arch Linux people. We're not those people. We will help you. So yeah, the command line interface, which you will download and use, custom GPT, which I highly recommend you use because our specific starting point, it's built to work well with pair runtime and the whole punch decentralized networking thing, which that's a whole other can of worms. If you're watching this and you don't know what that is, do not worry about it yet. Um, So I do recommend using the custom GPT because I have been doing a lot of tweaking to get it to work with that in particular. It's unlikely you'll get as good results doing what we're doing if you use anything else. I would like to incorporate open source LLMs and have them be compatible as well, but we're not there yet. So if you want to follow along exactly with what we're doing for now, you're going to want to use OpenAI for that. And also, this is only going to work right now for desktop apps. So things like Python scripts and other things like that, it's already at a point where you can get those things done in a simple environment for simple tasks. You can already do that. To build more in-depth apps like the ones that we're building without any coding experience, it's gonna ta I'm getting to that. It's gonna take some time though, because I have to build the tooling around it for each individual type of thing. And so I started with desktop apps. So that's what we're starting with. So if you're gonna follow along and you're expecting a full, diverse skill set, programming without the ability to code using LLMs, um, we're gonna get there, but we aren't quite there yet. So I will say that. So come here for like the season 1 or whatever, prepare to be able to build desktop apps.
So, we are going to now get into what we're going to do in today's episode specifically is we are going to build a diagram of the app that we are trying to build that we will be doing over the next few episodes and, in and out as well, so that we have a platform to build tiny apps within that now everybody can easily use if we have this one foundation as a jumping off point, essentially. But we're going to try to do this with ChatGPT. Let's do a diagram for this thing. And I'm going to need a lot of help on this to make sure that I'm thinking about this right.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be 3 main parts. It's gonna be 3 main parts.
Yep.
We're gonna be just writing down, getting all our thoughts on the paper, which we can do on the diagram. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
then we have to make like an actual diagram of like what the app will look like. And then we have to
Mm-hmm.
talk about the type of data that's involved. Like, is your name, if you're making an account, what's in your account? And it might
Mm-hmm.
sound like that's not important to be separate from the diagram, but it is, for reasons that we'll
Yeah.
probably get to when we start building. But
Mm-hmm.
understanding what data that you need, like all the variables, knowing what those are going to be, you want to have that known and separate from the diagram because you have to figure out where you want to put that data. Because if you want to
Yeah.
put a button on the top with your name and then you want a prompt on the bottom where you change your name, well, if you made the button with your name and the name's already in the button file, how the hell is it going to get into the prompt? And how are you going to get the prompt to change it in the button? And if you work yourself into a corner like that and you don't know how to code and you're using AI, well, good luck explaining that problem to AI and having it give you an answer that will work that you can understand and implement. That's a big shortcoming for devs who can't code is that unfortunately the skill that you do have to learn is figuring out, okay, what data belongs in this file and what data belongs in a higher up file where that other thing will take that data, which again might not make sense now, but the more we actually start coding and in the following episodes, the more sense that's going to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and I want to leverage probably for the simplicity of sharing and stuff down the road, and because we have something that we can probably implement with tools that we already have, they're all open source and stuff. Even though there's a very limited audience with this still, I think Nostr identity is probably the quickest way to a login sort of function, um, or a this is my ID and this is how I can share stuff type thing.
Oh, that was just an example of data. I was like, what
Just an
kind of
example of
data does an
data.
app have? Account data. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, because we will down the road. I mean, I guess it's not really necessary at the beginning because we won't have a huge selection of stuff. We'll just be building very simple things, in a small list. But I do want to have it so that you can you can have your favorites and then have an element where you're literally able to share stuff that you have built with other people. But that's the 10th episode of this whole thing, to start integrating that sort of thing.
If people want to record their experience building something using our what they learned from us, if people want to build things and record their experience doing it, and then like we host some kind of contest or something, that'd be cool.
Dude, oh my god, that would be
That'd
fantastic
be a cool
actually.
way to
Yeah,
build a
if
community.
you're building something within this, like when we have this the base available for the app, and then also just tiny apps, and you want to build something that works inside of this, that would be fantastic. And I'd love to like watch through and just kind of see how you guys interact with stuff and see what things you run into, because that will help us target what we need to teach for, okay, how to think about this, how to get around or avoid problems like that, and what main problems people are running into, because my problems might not be your problems. That's actually a really great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I would be
Mhm.
more than happy to watch stuff if you wanted to send that to me. I'll have a link. Maybe I'll create like a email address or something. Maybe, I don't know. We'll figure that out, and we'll set up details and put those in the show notes for anybody who wants to start playing around with that. Okay, so right now my thinking is the app itself. I want to have a simple interface that's showing a list of apps, which we can make them graphical later. Right now, it can literally just be a text list. And I want to be able to drag and drop new apps into this. So, like, let's say I make a Python script. Rather than having to go to terminal and type in Python, blah, 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 go to the folder and then, get the URL or the file system location, the file path, and execute it that way, that I can take the .py file, drop it into this, it propagates in the list, and then I can click on something in this list and I can say run. And this could be super like 1990s, dirty internet sort of look right now. And I feel like the first thing I need is a database of apps, right? Like I just need something to work off of that we are adding to or taking away from and updating.
Okay, so that's it. That's a lot good stuff in there. So we want so then we want to break this down into bullet points. So I guess the first good bullet point would be we want a desktop app to show a list of icons that represent different scripts, such as Python
Mm-hmm.
scripts, that can be executed on click.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'd want to
All
write
right.
that
So
down.
how would you
Um,
use this diagram thing? Would you write notes in this actual thing?
yeah. Uh, well, no, but just for simplicity's sake, so we can have one file to reference, I would put it
Mm-hmm.
in the .io file. So you can click a text or heading text box. I recommend a heading
Heading
text
text
box,
box. Okay.
which is yep. And then I'd put it in the top left. You can scroll up to the top left and then yeah. Name it description or whatever, or tiny app, sure. Um, and so this is just for brainstorming. I wonder if there's a way to shrink this. That'd be great. Um,
This is what? Oh wait, a what?
yes,
This
you can. I would go. Okay, so I would go to 10px.
10px. What is that?
Yeah.
Oh, point.
Yeah. So if you, yes, and then bring it up to the top left, just so it's not taking up a whole bunch of space. Um, and then the first bullet point, which I forgot what I said, but if you remember what I said, uh, a desktop app that shows a list of scripts as icons, uh, that could be any language that execute on click.
This episode is brought to you by the Cold Card hardware wallet. This is an ultra secure device. This is a hardware wallet that signs all of your Bitcoin transactions so that your keys stay on this device. They never leave this device. They are securely held, and you can't even get into this device. You can set up a BrickMe pin. You can set up a Duress pin with a dummy wallet. There are so many. This thing is built with the absolute top-notch security in mind. It has a verifiable source code. It is Bitcoin only. It can be air-gapped from start to finish. And my favorite, you can set it up with NFC tap. Where's my phone? So you can tap right on your phone, and you can transfer the transaction, you can sign it, and then send it right back to your wallet. And you can use a wallet interface on your phone that is super easy, super simple, and still incredibly secure. Your keys never leave this device. They're never on your phone. And if you want 150,000 sats and you've been watching this show, you'll know what I'm about to do. Word number 8 is apart. Word number 12 is spend. And word number 4 is resource. Maybe you should write those down, and maybe there's 150,000 sats behind them, and maybe you should keep watching the show and keep an ear out for the rest of those seed words, because there's 150,000 sats waiting for somebody. You can get your cold card with a discount code Bitcoin Audible. The details and the links will be right in the show notes. And maybe you'll get 150,000 sats to go with it. I don't know. I'll write down some words. Also a drag and drop zone that will take a file as input to the script. And then the script itself uses a universal input language, like a variable. So like a drag and drop that allows me to use a in fact, that might actually be the way to do it. Have the drag and drop zone not have anything to do with the scripts themselves. Just have a way to hit plus and say add script. And then, you can add a Python file, because maybe I actually want to do some sort of a function on a Python file that's not related to running it. You know what I mean? So I have a plus button that I can add to the list if I want to for scripts. But the drag and drop drag and drop location is for a file to use as an input to the script. So the example being is I have shows.
I think a good way to put that is
media.
A plus button that on click brings up the file explorer where you can click on a file to add it to the list.
Whoops. Brings up file sex explorer to. All right.
I mean, hey, people use hole punch for whatever. I don't.
Yeah, whatever. Swarm hole. Did you see that? Were you in that group?
I am not.
I made a pair lobby group or whatever, and we were joking about what to call it, because everybody's like, "Is this hole punch or is this pair runtime or whatever?" And I was like, "There's like a bunch of different things, but I've just been referring it to the pair stack, and Math thought that was a good way to refer to it because it's just easy." And then a bunch of people were joking. Super Sue from the wholesale guy was jumping in and like coming up with a bunch of different names, and people were throwing in their stuff, and Swarm Hole came up, and that cracked me up. And so for a little while it was called the Swarm Hole Lobby.
That's an accurate description.
All right. And then a drag and drop zone that will take the file as input to any script, and the scripts use plural
a drag and drop
a universal
for
variable.
Files. Yes.
Yes.
Must be able to discern how to execute a script based on file extension. Which, if you'll notice, that's a bullet point that's less about how it looks and more about what it's doing, like what it's capable of.
Doing. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because these are the points that AI, in my experience, using LLMs to help with code, using bullet points that are just concisely what you want, like your strict business requirements. Those are things that LLMs respond well to. Let me think. What else?
Including accurate error message. If wrong type, this is like a pet peeve of mine, is getting generic messages, generic errors. Type is added. So I'd like it to be able to see a bunch of different things. It's like, okay, I can't execute JavaScript right now. Like that hasn't been installed or activated yet. So that, because that's something that I put into one of my other scripts is I used to get a generic error that like the Whisper model just wouldn't work with it, but it was because FFmpeg wouldn't convert the file because I accidentally put a document or a folder into my transcribe app rather than my zip drop, which was because my apps are just down there on the. I use them in drag and drop, and so I accidentally drag it to the wrong one because I'm just dragging and dropping a bunch of things all at once. Um, and it'll give me some like weird error, and I'd be like, "Wait, did something break? Is my file path wrong? What the hell just happened?" And I just realized I just dropped it on the wrong app. So I added a line that said, "This is not media. Please use a media file or whatever." And that's made it much better when I've made errors in my use of it. Okay. Um, what else? What else do we need?
Um, I don't know. Do you think that's it? I feel like that's a pretty good starting point for what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, as
Yeah.
we like make the design for what it's supposed to look like, um, we can come back and refine this. But I think this is
Mm-hmm.
a good starting point.
All right. We will just leave that right where it is then. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to create a script list right here. Oh, you have to actually make it a rectangle or a square. Rectangle. I don't know why I like rectangle better. It feels right. So this is going to be the main thing that we run off of is our script list.
Um, all right. Uh,
What you thinking?
I'm thinking just for learning's sake, just for people following along, we might want
Mm-hmm.
to split this off into concise sections. So like we should probably make a heading for like design or something.
Okay.
Um, and then we could put the design under this. So like get rid of all the bottom text. Um, so now we just want to figure out like put like a rectangle that is like your screen and then what parts go where. Which
Okay. So design visually what we want it to look
yes.
like. Okay.
Conventionally, because we're trying to go from like human to mechanical is the flow that I want
Yeah.
to use. I think that makes the most sense for the target audience, for all the
Okay.
fellow
That's a
devs who
good
can't
point.
code, is going most
Mm-hmm.
human to most mechanical, and the process of doing that. Um,
And that actually gives me an idea or gives me a thought on what I want to do. Else search bar to uh, live update list based on search terms. So as this list gets actually pretty large, like I have say we have a search thing, search for script. That needs a. So here's a little search bar up at the top. And then we have a drag files.
I think it's a good idea too when you're on this stage of designing, come up with a short, concise name for the component, and then comma the description of it, like what it does. So that way you can easily reference it for
Okay.
throughout other parts of the document, and you can know exactly what you're referring to.
And put this actually in my diagram.
Yeah, so like you could
Like
say,
right here, like I say drag files and then say drag and drop zone for files.
I feel like it'd be a good idea to say like DF or something in parentheses, just something that like if you see it,
Okay.
occur anywhere else in the document, you know the exact component that you're referring to.
Okay, gotcha. We're gonna D&D it.
Hell yeah. Like how the IKEA furniture
Script
does it.
list. Yeah.
So this is like the main design. So we could call
Yep.
this like the window design or whatever. Not I would leave that part. I would add a new smaller heading that just goes over this specific one. Because what we can do is go into like the script list. You might want to have more parts in that. So if you want to design that in particular, you can make a new block separate from this one that just shows the design for the script list. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Um,
Where's my center? There we go. Window design. All right, so search. That feels right. I'll kind of make a just take out the um vowels so it's easy to understand. It's not too likely to get it mixed up with something else.
less intimidating looking too.
Yeah. But yeah, like honestly, oh, and then I guess I'll have a let's see with the plus button here. Oopsies. That's an arrow to something else. Let's see. Name type. I'm trying to think about what I would need in the I'm gonna lower the margin on this just a little bit. And then have a box up here at the top. Script details.
So if these might sound like a lot of rules up front, but they're going to remain consistent. So it's not really going to be all that much in the great scheme of things. What you're building
Mm-hmm.
right now are parts of the script list component, right? Um,
Yeah.
like if you click on a script, it's going to show the details or whatever. So if you want to, when you label those parts, you'd say scrpts dash sd or something like that, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and these are labels that we might not even ever feed into the AI. It's just for us to be able to, like, when we see these words anywhere else in the document, we know exactly what we're referring to, which
Mm-hmm.
is going, the importance of that is going to become very clear very quickly as we go on.
Yeah. Can I change the font for just this one piece? Yes, I can. Boom. Um, can I use a plus symbol in the variable for the name, or should I avoid that and just use nothing but text?
I would use letters personally, but
Just
you
use
can do
letters.
whatever you
Okay.
want. Yeah.
Add. I just want to make sure it works well with what we're doing.
I would call that one scrpts-add.
Okay. That's probably a good point. Is make sure they're all a sub function of the scripts.
Yes.
Um.
Because
Okay.
these can be very important distinctions, especially when we talk about like what data we're gonna need where. So like the script list
Mm-hmm.
component, like the scripts details and scripts add, those might be their own files depending on how complex they may or may not be.
Mm-hmm.
But they would need to share data with the script list. So it's
Yeah.
better to figure that out now and work with that in mind than uh, not to and try to get AI to like when we mess up what data goes where, it's gonna get very quickly. It's gonna become impossible for AI to give us meaningful help.
Yeah. Where should you put the plus button for something like this? Is this something I should just put outside of this box?
I don't think it matters too much. I would keep it just because this diagram is supposed to be somewhat reminiscent of what we want, but mostly functional for us. I would keep it in the script
Yeah.
list box.
Okay. Wait a second. We could do it at the bottom of the list. Whatever. We'll just put it down in the bottom right for now. I feel like it will get on top of the list itself, like on top of the details, but we'll place it where it feels right when we're actually using it, when we're actually pressing buttons and doing something. I feel like it might something more intuitive will probably just kind of come up. Okay. So yeah. So I've got script details, which I think should be like right here would be title and then type of script. Like, is this Python? Is this Java? Well, for the user, is that more likely going to matter?
Um,
Maybe from their standpoint, that's less important.
for things like that, I think very short description and a tag. And then we're going to go outside of this diagram and we're going to go
Mm-hmm.
more in depth with things like that. Um,
Okay.
so
Because I do want this to be kind of a GUI at some point where I can actually just put icons and stuff and then click on them and maybe expand them later.
yeah, let's are you talking about what we're going to show in the script details?
Yeah. That's what I was
Yeah,
specifically
I would just leave
thinking about.
that text how it is, and then when we want to get more
Mm-hmm.
specific as to what details we want to show, we could do that in text elsewhere, and then easily reference it with the strpts DTLS tag.
Gotcha.
Which I know we sound super
You know what?
technical, guys, but I swear you're not going to have to learn how to code. This is all the skills that we learn in substitution of learning how to code. So that way we can actually get LLMs to do things that are kind of complicated without us learning what it's doing.
Yeah. I think the search should go above the list rather than the drag and drop because that feels separated. It's like, are they even related?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So I think this is a simple. This is kind of all the interface we need for kind of the rough draft for the beginning of it. Um. So script list PTS. Let's keep our naming conventions right.
Oh, that's a good idea. Make little boxes for each one of these like main labels. So for the main labels, I would make
Mm-hmm.
boxes, and then of course this could change depending on how complicated they get. But like a main label would be SCRPTS, and then like a sub label will be like
Mm-hmm.
script details, SCPRTS dash DTLS, which
Okay.
I know that probably sounds like intimidating already to some people. I know that like when I first started learning how to design stuff, anytime acronyms came up, my eyes would glaze over and I'd stop listening. But I swear, guys, this is not going to be that hard. And then you could
And I
expand the
can
size of the
totally see how
box.
this is useful too, because if you um so script details, what else would we need? Scripts add.
Hmm.
Um BTS. So these are all sub functions of scripts. Of the
You
script
can
list,
no,
I
you
mean.
can expand. I would recommend using an empty box and then putting a heading at the top of the box. And then you could
Okay.
press control and drag your mouse over, click and drag your mouse over, and you can move them all as a group.
Gotcha. Okay. So control does that.
Something does that. One of those keyboard
Something
shortcuts,
does that.
clicking,
I'll
dragging.
use one of the
You can move these
keyboard
as a
shortcuts.
group. Oh,
How do I
what?
move this to back? To send backward. There we go. All right, cool. So I've got our script list. Okay.
And then do the same even for the simple components. And then we can drag arrows from these things to more in-depth explanations of them. Um,
Okay, so what would be the simpler things? How would I designate the drag and drop in our diagram here?
I would do the same thing you did for script list, except you wouldn't have any boxes in it, any more boxes because there's no subparts. But I would still put a box of the
Gotcha.
same size.
Okay.
And then the tag, yes.
Okay. Drag and drop
Shout
files.
out Professor X.
And
He put me out to this.
whoops. Can you not alt drag? Oh, no, command drag. Okay. And then we want to have search scripts. This is the Swan Bitcoin app, and this is how easy it is to just buy Bitcoin whenever you're feeling like it. And I feel like it right now. And as it shows me right here, I still have $9,388 worth of my $10,000 of Bitcoin buying that has no fees whatsoever. And now I have $10 more worth of Bitcoin. I do this quite often. One of the really great things about Swan is the incredible number of resources they have for learning and understanding anything that you want to know about Bitcoin. And importantly, they're going to teach you why you should not trade. They're not going to encourage you to trade. They are Bitcoin only. If you're looking for an easy and reliable way to get into Bitcoin, if you're looking to put Bitcoin in your IRA, if you're looking to put Bitcoin in your business, if you're looking to do anything around getting on a Bitcoin standard or getting exposed to Bitcoin in your portfolio, check out swanbitcoin.com/guy is my special link, and you will find it very conveniently right in the show notes. Would this technically be under script functions, or would the search be separate and kind of
We're
universal,
grouping
do
them
you think?
based on like they're different components. They would certainly live in different files. And so that's why we're grouping
Okay.
them. We're grouping them off of like files like that. But there's like the visual component, interactive component, and then there's the data that that
Mm-hmm.
component is showing and manipulating. Those are two separate things. So you're right; those would
Okay.
probably share a
The
similar
search
data
is a
stream.
function, and we might have a different data set to search, and the search function wouldn't change. So I
So
see
the
why that
script
would be
list
separate.
is visually showing the list of
Mm-hmm.
scripts and all that, and the search scripts
Mm-hmm.
affects what scripts would be shown in script list, but they're going to be two different components and therefore two different files. So the data that they're working with has to be this thing that lives under both of them in its own file.
Gotcha.
It's
Gotcha.
very,
Okay.
very, very important for us as the devs that can't code that we understand when data should not be living in the same file as the component. And so the script list,
Okay.
that would be one of those things that the data for the script list should not live in the component. It should absorb that data from a different file where it's giving that
Gotcha.
data to multiple different components. It's that's the main complexity and the main skill actually of a software designer, as I'm gonna start calling it from now on, is knowing when
All
that's the
right.
case. The
Yeah.
knowing what data goes where, because that's where all the problems come from when you're building apps and you don't know how to code, and the LLM gives you data in the wrong spot. That's the
Hmm.
main problem.
What's the next thing, and how do we think about uh how to create like a flow? Do we want to create like a diagram flow of this right now too? Oh, and we need like an execute environment. How do we
I
execute
think
shit?
so. Well, that's going to be a function. That's going to be different. So
Okay, so that won't be here. We're not going to be thinking about this right here. Yeah.
what we built now is the division
Mhm.
of the big app to all the components, pretty much, and
Okay.
how there'll be different components in different files. Like, uh, so these boxes, that's a good format for that.
Mhm.
So now we need to talk about the data and where how the data is going to fit in to these different components, and that is going to be more like a flow chart. So I think that there should be a new section called data where we just list out all the data that we're going to need from all of these components. Um,
Okay.
so I would make like a new quadrant. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So data. This will be how we make use of this stuff here.
I'm sorry if it's distracting for anyone watching if I move all the time. I can't help it.
Oopsies. No, that's fine. Let me group this so I can take this around. All right, so we don't need anything else over here in our description of pieces because most of the other things will be functions that makes more sense in our flow chart. All right, so what do we do with our data window here? Walk me through this. I'm gonna save it again so I don't lose my progress. My progress.
So I think it's best to like do like a top-down approach, like how we just did with the components. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna need a database. Let's not use the term database. That has a specific meaning. Let's not use that word
Mm-hmm.
unless we're sure it's what we're gonna use, and it's actually probably not gonna
Mm-hmm.
be a word that we're gonna use here. Um, we are gonna need a list of the scripts. So we're gonna need the scripts themselves, right?
Okay.
Um, and that's gonna be like a main data, and then we're gonna break that out into lower. Yeah, each we should have a box for each main data point. That's a good idea. I didn't even think about that.
All right. List the scripts. List
Yes, I see
te.
you're using technical
List
words.
test scripts.
I wouldn't use that label.
You wouldn't.
No,
Okay, so
not yet.
this is
Don't
separate.
use.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a component thing. Um, yeah, I might sound really nitpicky at first, but the further we get into this process, the more you'll be like, oh, every little difference is like that was a potential pitfall where I would have flipped my table and walked away because the LLM
Mm-hmm.
stopped working for me. Every little thing can can equate to that.
Interesting. Okay, yeah.
So the I would call that the list of scripts, uh, li-
List
saved
of
scripts
scripts.
or
So
something.
not an action, but
No,
a
not
what
an
is it?
action. Yes. And so yeah, for this app, I think those are really the only main data types we need. It's not that complicated. So the list of
Mm-hmm.
scripts, that's where the data's we're gonna need a lot more sub categories. Or we're gonna need for each script, we're gonna need the name of the script. So now we're gonna list stuff. So that's the heading, and the rest of the stuff is like a list. File extension.
Okay, yeah, file extension specifically. Try to use something as universal as possible here.
Um, the path to the script, and then I don't know. Do we want to add descriptions of what they do, like that type of metadata?
Yeah,
Which that would be data that we have to manually enter in.
yeah, yeah. Well, we could technically do it in like shareable data. I mean, obviously, the person who makes it would have to enter it in, but I think about it almost in like a RSS feed type idea. Is title, description, the location where you don't actually see it, but you need it in the RSS feed, and so that when these things become icons, and it's more of a GUI list, and you can drag and drop and use stuff selectively and save like a doc maybe somewhere in here. Like maybe we have a doc of like my favorite apps or whatever at the top or something like that I use constantly. Is when we get to that point is I can click on them and expand details, and I can see it kind of like if I want to expand a podcast episode, or I want to expand a app in the app store, or an audiobook on Audible or something. I get more details. I get the author, and maybe even if we are thinking about this from a social sharing point of view, it's like, okay, well, what are the other apps that this author has made available to me? Like let's say Hope has built 20 apps, that sort of thing, so
I'm
that we
going to
can
stop you right
kind of
there.
go
That's
down
I'm
that
going to
road.
stop. You're talking about relations between data. What you're talking
Hmm.
about exponentially increase the complexity. Which
Sure.
it's something we could do, but if we start there, for the devs who can't code, being a first project to learn the ropes, uh, that would be
Oh, no, I don't mean
that would
this is
be
like
a
now. I mean
huge
it is
task.
going in that direction. I want to think about it as that's the way we're headed. So how do we build it now so that that's possible down the
Okay,
road without having to redo things? That's all I mean by that. Yeah.
so the dev who can code in me is saying we're going to need files that are attached to each one of these files that just hold their metadata. For the devs who can't code, you
Okay.
can't really expect them to know that. So how do we get to that
Okay.
point where an LLM would
Mm-hmm.
understand that that's what we need without explicitly saying it? And that would be by knowing what data we need. So if we explicitly tell the LLM that we're going to need data uh, related to each file that is not in the file itself,
Mm-hmm.
it will probably build a system around that. Um,
Okay.
so if we want to add that metadata as well to files, that means that when we
Mm-hmm.
drag a file into the drag and drop or whatever, we're gonna need some pop-up screen with a prompt for us to enter in all that
Yeah.
metadata.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to go back to the design and add another window there. So
And
the
another
window
window.
design,
Okay.
we might want to rename the window design
To hit
to
add.
home screen design. So for the add script design, I think the overall thing should not be rounded square. It should be a like same type of square as the outer home screen design. I don't know if that makes any
Okay.
sense.
All right.
And so for this, each prompt should have its own rectangle, like rounded rectangle probably, where
Inside of
the
it.
name, yeah, the name of the script would just be its file name. Or if you, no. The file name should be different than the name, I think. That makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
And then we don't need the type of script because we're going to infer that from the file extension.
Yeah. So that'll just, I think the file name and the extension can all be pulled from the file path
I think we should
or
have like
add.
a human normal name because the file names can also often be not that. We should probably have like a separate name, and if you don't enter any name, it'll probably just use the file name. Does that make sense?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean though.
Okay, so we
Like
need that.
you use as far as like the file name specifically, not the name, not the title, but the file name. Like where is it in the thing? All of that, the extension, everything can be basically derived. This does not let me grab all of these very easily. How do I do this? Here we go.
And then we're gonna need the path. We're gonna need script name, description.
Dang it. There we go. There we go.
Script name, description, and location. If we use the drag and drop feature, then we already have the location. Um, but if we don't
Yeah.
use that, if we click the add button, the location. So the only thing that drag and drop should do is autofill the location of this on the screen. Um,
Gotcha. All right. Hmm. And then do we want to think about any data we're going to add later, or just kind of leave this open so that when we have it, like let's say if this is something that I have made, or there is metadata for something that I'm adding to it, um, uh, we would probably need a function to see if there is already data attached to it. How do we do that?
um, we can use the file name in the script extension. Outside of that, I would disregard file metadata for now, and I would just use it as a user prompt. Um,
Okay. And I guess maybe like right now, what we can do down the road is like, I'm thinking about it like if you make one and then send it to me, I want to be able to get your file data, like your title, your description and stuff. Um, and maybe that's something we can do with just like a pair key, and we can basically build a blob and then just share it a key. So like we can add either by adding from our file browser, like just normal our computer, or I can add it with a key that you're sending to me when we kind of integrate pair runtime and sharing and stuff.
um, I think you're putting an awfully tall order on devs who can't code. When you start trying to think about things like that, um, I don't think I'd be able to get AI to do something that involved without knowing how to code at all. Um,
Well, maybe that's not something, maybe that's we just build into the app rather than the devs who can't code then, you know?
yeah.
But it would be a really cool functionality if we had a bunch of devs who can't code who could build little apps like this, and then an easy way for them to deliver. Maybe they don't need to know how to build that delivery mechanism until maybe we get to a point where an AI is trained well enough on pair runtime to do something like that. But if not, well, okay, but if the app can do it, we can utilize it. But
I think
anyway,
a better approach looking at things like that is
hmm
instead of building all of that off of the app, build the sharing script things, networking side of it, build that as an NPM
hmm
package, have good documentation for it, and then ask your AI to use that to connect things.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little library or just like a It's a set of commands, kind of like pair drive that we're trying to do is give it the manual page, the man page of, you know, whatever that app is, and then you can then use that to build something with it to be able to deliver it to people.
Yeah, it's
All right.
the bar is lower, but the bar exists for building things without
Yeah.
being able to code. So software
Mm-hmm.
designers, I think they can't build things without being able to code that could be a whole bunch of different packages, but they could build individual
Mm-hmm.
packages and then put them together over time. And it's just knowing
Yeah.
how to break things apart properly in a way that the AI will, in a way that the LLM will always give you responses that can work without you having to know how to code,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly the process that we're going through right now. Um,
Gotcha. All right. So now we've got
so
two different things. We can add script and the details, and we have the home screen design. Now, where do we need to go with this, or how do we need to think about it?
um, honestly, I feel like this might be a good cutoff point because where we get to now
Mm-hmm.
is talking about how we're going to look at and approach data, and that is the most complicated part.
Yeah.
But once devs who can't code understand that, they can build things that are much more complex than anything they've been able to build before they understood that. So like
Gotcha.
the individual script details, uh, all play a part into the bigger list of scripts, and that bigger list of scripts has to sit as data outside of all the components, but the components need to read it in and update in real time.
We
Um,
need to talk to it. Yeah. Read it and talk to it in real
so
time.
that is a state management thing, which is still something that um, is up to the dev and not the LLM to understand. The LLM can build that stuff out, but it won't build it out intelligently because no matter how
Mm-hmm.
advanced LLMs get, they're still word guessers, and that requires like a human level of understanding of what you're actually building.
Yeah, it can only guess right if it has all of the elements of the environment in which it's guessing in. You know, it can't
Yes,
guess
and
the end
those
of
are
your story if you
things.
don't have all of the details at the beginning of it. And when we're talking about software, that's kind of what this is really
Yes.
understanding all of the pieces that go into an app. All right. Well,
Yeah,
cool.
so then we're gonna get into the state management stuff.
This is a place to start to think about it. And this is our basic app concept that we're headed toward. And the next time we will kind of build the flow and maybe start building the first initial pieces of this thing and seeing where we go.
And then I think that's a good idea, building it so you can have like authors of different scripts and then share them
Mm-hmm.
and use this app like as a interface for that. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good idea to have an ambitious, longer term goal like that because then that's a very good use case for us to show like, okay, this is in one project, this is multiple projects, and we
Yeah.
need to get the AI to LLM to build them separately in completely separate conversations and then combine them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so like an LLM would be very bad, I think, at building a whole uh, networking system in within your components that will work together. Uh, when we did that, but if you design that networking system on its own using the pair runtime, and then
Mm-hmm.
ask it to build you an API, which is like a bunch of very simple commands that you can get our networking thing to do exactly what we want it to do, and then add
Mm-hmm.
documentation for that. Then we can feed a link to that into the LLM and tell it to use that to combine to add the networking to our app, and it can do that. I'm not sure if that was a whole bunch of word soup or whatever. I'm running out of like battery, but I think that's a good long term goal for this app.
No, I agree. All right, this is a good spot. This is a good spot then, dude. thank you for joining me. We will be doing this. Let's try to do this weekly so that we can really keep the momentum going and build this out, and then, run up against walls when we hit this. And we'll try to make this 30 minutes to an hour every single week until this starts culminating into something. And hopefully, this gives you guys a way to think about and dive into building something bigger than you are used to, or building bigger projects, and also giving us all an environment to build small projects, and hopefully one day, relatively soon, start sharing and executing those as a group, as a community. So that's exciting. I think we got something to start from. We got a diagram and we have direction. So Hope, thank you for joining me as always as co-host of Devs Who Can't Code. And I am Guy Swan. We'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy, guys.